We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this VexHeads logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, VexHeads, and welcome to episode 63 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast that's on its own kind of secret third side in the war on Christmas. DM me if you want in. It is also a Flags for Good podcast, as always, and it is probably a little too late to get any flags for Christmas or the holidays this year. But you know what it's not too late to get flags for? January 20th is coming up. So, if you've got any strong feelings on that, one way or, well, pretty much one way, you can head on over to flagsforgood.com/flagged4content for like the number and put in that same code when you check out with all those cool flags. Get yourself a little discount, helps the show out a little bit as well. So, happy holidays, y'all. Merry holidays. Maybe that's the third way I'm taking. I'm going to keep this even shorter than normal and just say that Max and I had a fantastic conversation here. We went I think we went to like almost 45 minutes on the bonus. So if you are a patron or want to subscribe to the Patreon, now is a fantastic time. Maybe you got holiday money, who knows? But yeah, we went way over and talked about a ton of stuff over there on the Patreon. But don't worry, we got to a lot of stuff in this episode as well. And speaking of that, you will want to get into the show notes. Max dropped a ton of flags and just like info, like descriptions, like the show notes are even more robust than normal. So, when I'm doing these video edits, there's only so much I can do. I tried to get a lot of them in there, but sometimes I was like, oh, shoot, I should have put that here or there or whatever. Anyway, go into the show notes, check it all out. It's very seamless, easy to get through. You will know exactly what everything is. And you'll see some of the stuff we talk about in the Patreon, so that could be enticing as well. Anyway, I'll stop going on about the Patreon. I think, yeah, like I said, I'm going to keep it short this week. That's pretty much it. We didn't have any other weird issues like that. So since it's the holidays, I'll let y'all off easy and we'll go into the show now. Enjoy this episode 63 with Maxwell Feldmann. We have got an amazing VexHead on the podcast today. You know him from his designs on r/Vexillology. You know him from his proposals for a few Texas city flags. And you know him from his Illinois flag redesigns. It's Maxwell Feldmann! What's up, Max? How you been, man?
I've been good. I've just chilling right now. I just am finishing my studies at Notre Dame, and I just got back from a gap year to do a few internships.
Oh, that's exciting. Internships where?
Mostly back home, in where I'm from in Centennial, Texas. I did a lot of PR and marketing, and that kind of led me to design, and that design kind of led me into the VexHead realm, which is a lot of fun. And then I had a chance to work at the state capitol as well.
Oh, nice. So that led you into, okay, all right. So I might see where we're going with the flag that got you into flags, I guess, in that sense.
It would be... No. Oh, apologies.
No, not a problem. That is very exciting stuff, especially like getting into graphic design and everything. I assume that gives you a pretty big in to the vexillology world. So we'll go ahead and skip over most of that stuff, but we will go into what's on the flagpole today, which relates to that. We've got our usual over and underrated flags. We have a lot of ideas on redesigning Illinois and some thoughts on civil versus state flags that we don't tend to usually talk about. All that aside, before we get to any of that, Max, what is the flag that got you into flags?
I would say it's my own home city flag of Centennial, because I think there's such a contrast with the lack of seeing that flag throughout the city and the ubiquitous nature of the Texas flag, which you will see all over the state and all outside of the state as well.
Okay. All right. And so for those of us that don't know the San Antonio flag, can you briefly describe that to us?
Sure. So it's a blue and red bicolor. I believe it's actually the same colors as the state flag and the national flag. And then in the center, there is a white star that covers the entire vertical length of the flag. So the top vertex, whatever you call the point, touches the top of the flag, and then the two southernmost points touch the bottom of the flag. And then within that white star, there's a somewhat crude depiction of the Alamo, which is kind of San Antonio's claim to fame, and it was one of the turning points in the Texas Revolution.
Right. Okay. So a lot going on there, including words, I guess.
We used to have words saying like San Antonio, but we actually removed them. So actually,
Okay,
it's,
so
it's
it's
technically, according to NAVA, it's one of the more highly rated flags. I think the 2004 NAVA survey ranked it as 13, if I remember correctly. But I think there are a couple problems with it, in my opinion. One, you don't see it anywhere, and you could say, well, that's maybe not necessarily the design, but also the more like the education and like information available about it. But in my opinion, while it technically follows like the guidelines that Ted K laid out, and like it's generally good, I think the idea of the Alamo being such like a small element, you can hardly recognize it.
Right.
Like it kind of looks like it was made in Microsoft Paint, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But like in this case, like the Alamo is such a central core to San Antonio's and even Texas's history that just kind of reducing it to like a tiny charge that you can barely see, especially on a waving flag, it doesn't go well with Texans, and I don't think that's part of the major reason why you don't see it flying a lot, and it kind of just, I don't know. I mean, it looks fine on a charge on the star, but I don't think like it matches up super well, in my opinion.
Right, right. I mean, that is usually the question when we get into that is like, how often is it used? And I guess you're saying not that
Not
often.
at all.
Yeah.
I've only really seen it on City Hall, and then there's a small like luxury shopping district in like the far northwest part of the city called La Cantera, and they have it on the flagpole there. But you will,
Right.
I have in my entire life, I have never seen the flag outside of those, other than online.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I can relate to that in Chattanooga here too. We have a very bad flag that has flown over. I mean, even as far as government buildings, it's flown over like one of them that I can see. But anyway, all right. So hey, it's still the flag that got you into flags, so it still had its purpose. So given that was your intro into flags, what would you say? Well, you can go with either the over or underrated here. But now that you're into flags, which one do you think is over or under?
Well, I know it's less of a surprise to you now, considering we forgot to record the first time, but
Hey, that's a secret.
I would say my underrated would be Minnesota. The new
this
Minnesota
guy
flag.
right here.
The one I asked you to hang for this specific reason.
Yeah. All right. And for the listeners' first time, why do you think it's underrated?
Well, generally, I think within like the people who like are less inclined about flags and like kind of their symbolism and purpose, some people were just generally resistant to change, and even those who were more open, like were asking, why is it this minimalistic? And then within the VexHead community, there's a lot of people who also ask, why is it so minimalistic, especially compared to the original winter finalist design, which was the same layout, but except it was a tricolor on the fly side where the light blue is. And it's kind of unique because like it was like a little bit less saturated colors, which people said like generally kind of fitted with like the wintry element of Minnesota. And I can understand that. And then from my perspective, I think it's kind of visually interesting because you normally think for like a tricolor fez like that, you have white in the middle or in this way. But it was actually at the top. I think the color was like green, light blue, white. Or maybe it was white. I forgot the exact order, but the white was at the top, which is like interesting because it was like asymmetrical color wise. The symbolism there was pretty like direct. It was like forest, sky / water,
Yeah.
like snow. It's like there wasn't much to that, but and I was a little confused first. It's like why remove that? But like I totally understand it now. And from like the person who actually looked in and researched all like the exact meanings, but also from like the vibes perspective, because you don't normally think of all those meanings when you look at a flag. You just kind of think, does it look good or does it feel relevant to the state or cause or identity it's supposed to represent?
Mm-hmm.
So like from a vertical perspective, which is actually pretty uncommon flags, it's depicting the Mississippi River flowing from the North Star. Not a lot of flags have explicit symbolism to vertical orientations, which is very unique. The idea of
True.
The two-tone blue, which seems to be a little bit controversial, I personally like. There's nothing that says you can't have a two-tone blue, but like the entire word Minnesota comes from the Dakota language, which means the land of sky and water, or sometimes sky-tinted water. And I think having that two-tone blue really emphasizes that duality. And then when you add a little bit of white in there, you get like a very wintry feeling, which kind of substitutes for the slightly muted colors of the original version of the flag. So Minnesota's cold. That's no secret, especially if you're there right now. I'm in the Midwest right now, and the temperature just dropped, right after Thanksgiving. So if I'm feeling it, I know they're feeling it 2 times over. And then the star itself represents basically everyone. It's a Dakota tribe star. It's affiliated with that tribe. There's a lot of like barns specifically in Minnesota that have that type of star, that 8-pointed star hung on it. It's associated with like quilting. I don't know why it's specifically associated with Minnesota, but apparently it's a big thing. In fact, a lot of different like designs submitted in the Minnesota flag redesign contest utilize an 8-pointed star. And then it's in the rotunda, representing again the North Star, which doubles as their state motto and kind of represents that Minnesota is the northernmost state in the contiguous U.S. states.
Yeah.
So there's all, and of course, it has the Minnesota abstract shape, the little dark blue K, and generally I would say like shapes don't look great on the flag. They just look like too organic in my opinion. But here you can have a very nice geometric shape. It works well with the rest of the flag. It's an inverse chevron, and generally chevrons are a pretty common like motif on some flags. So it's related in that way, yet very distinct, because to my knowledge, there is no other flag in the world, definitely not at the national level, maybe not even at the, state or city level that uses an inverse chevron.
Yeah,
so
I'll
it's
give it
very
that.
unique in that way. And then on top of all that, like some people complained, there's no loon there. Well, I mean, this is probably a bit of a stretch, but you can sort of imagine the K-shaped Minnesota as like the head and the beak of the bird, and then with the star as the eye. So like if you want to see a loon, you can, but it's not going to be forced on you.
You can if you want. Yeah.
You squint enough.
You can like assign a lot of meanings to flags, post designing them.
Right.
And I know I have for the flag for the show, so
Right. And of course, like you're not gonna think all this all the time. Well, this is just nerding out here. But like generally, I passed the overall the vibe check in Minnesota.
Well, anyone who's listening is also a nerd listening to nerds.
Right.
Vibing out on a flag. But yeah, okay, so well, one other thing I did want to mention is, so you talked about like the barns and the quilting aspect of like this symbol here. Now, I know that as a uniquely Appalachian thing. So I don't understand how that can also be a uniquely Minnesotan thing. Or
I think in a lot of cases, there are coincidences, right? It's an 8-point star design. So like I wouldn't be surprised if it's used in other parts of the country, but like that representation, especially with the orientation, while it's not exactly the same on the flag, the quilt slash barn star is normally oriented where there are 2 points on top and 2 at the bottom. It, from what I've heard and looked at, like apparently that's like a Minnesota thing. Now, of course, like I'm not from there, so I can't. I don't have all the details, but like from everyone I talked to and looked online, everyone basically agrees like that's like a Minnesota North Star.
Gotcha.
But I'm sure like that doesn't mean like it. Minnesota can't have this because Appalachia has claims to it. Of course, some flags are related, by coincidence and not necessarily by, design. I don't think anyone's out there saying the flag of Arkansas with its diamond is, related or influenced by Brazil's flag, right? They're similar in design, but for completely different reasons.
Yeah, they just both happen to have a rhombus.
Right.
Our favorite shape on this show. All right, so we've gone through everything but your overrated, right?
Right. And
go ahead and get into that.
All right. And don't get your pitchforks out yet, but I think the flag of New Mexico is slightly overrated. It's an excellent design. They should never change it. But part of the allure the flag has, like among Americans especially, is because it's so unique. But I feel like the layout can be easily copied and applied for a few other flags, where it's simply a solid color field and a charge on top of that. Like I've seen a few flags out there for like a redesign of like Massachusetts flag, for example, where you replace like the central element with like a single charge on a white field. And a few others out there similar to that. Like Kansas, I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that there's going to be a sunflower on that flag at some point if it's redesigned.
Right.
And a lot of it is represented by just a sunflower on a solid colored field. And I think, that makes New Mexico's flag a little bit less standout-ish. I know when we did the pre-recording that never happened, wink, wink, you mentioned that, if it was among Japanese prefecture flags where they all are designed in some sort of stylized icon charged on a solid field, it would still be a great design, but it would not stand out as much.
Exactly.
So that's my point there.
Yeah. And that was my my point by making that point was that, like, yes, it is good design, but as you mentioned, it stands out because it's in a sea of other U.S. state flags.
Right.
It doesn't stand out necessarily on its own merits. And do I think it's a bad flag? No. Like, by any means, no. But, like, I think you and I can pretty much agree on this. Like, it's not a... God, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it that we can actually both agree on. It's not a special flag.
Right.
Like, and I guess what I mean by that is, like, it's not one of a kind. It's one of many. It's just that the many that it's a similar flag to don't happen to also reside in the U.S. Like the flags.
Right. I would say like the Minnesota flag, for better or for worse, we can disagree there, is pretty unique because of the 2-cone color layout and the English.
I would agree with that.
On like an international scale, that's pretty uncommon. It works really well here, but it's uncommon on a like global scale.
Yeah.
For New Mexico, it's really unique among U.S. state flags, but among all the flags of the world, there are some that follow like the same essential design layout.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, the Japanese prefecture ones, like basically anything that has a central element on a single colored field. Now, granted, obviously, there's going to be a lot of variance in those elements for sure, but the New Mexico one just doesn't, like, I don't know. It doesn't.
That being said, yellow, that's a pretty bold color, and it's
yellow and red, yeah.
It's it stands out especially among U.S. state flags because they're also blue generally, and it's the only U.S. state flag that does not have blue or white in the flag. But now that I think about it, on the global level, that's still pretty. That is kind of unique with that much yellow. Like some of the only exceptions I can think of is like Mauritania, which has a little bit of yellow, or like the flag of Chad and Romania, or like some like yellow accents. But like very rarely, I can't. There's no flag with a yellow field that comes to mind to me.
Oh God, yeah.
So maybe it's a little bit overrated, but not as overrated as I thought.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of them, and of course my brain's shutting down right when I try. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, what about the what is it? The Walloon part of Belgium, where they have a yellow field with a red rooster.
Right. I guess so.
It's totally the same thing. You could definitely confuse those two. No, you couldn't. Like, yes, I think you're no, like all jokes aside, I think your placement of it as overrated is a perfect placement of it, because it's not that it is not a good flag, and I don't think either of us are saying that, but it is I don't know, in a different part of the world, as we pointed out, it would not be the same.
Right.
It would not carry the same weight that it currently does in the US.
It's a fish among land animals.
Right.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But no, yeah. Is it a good flag? Yes. Is it the best flag? No. Even in the US, no, I don't think. Go Vols. But anyway. All right, so I think that might be a good place to finally take our first break here. So we're going to go do that. What's that?
Flagtastic.
Flagtastic place to do it. When we get back from this flagtastic break, we are going to get a lot more into Max's Illinois redesigns. That is the bulk of the show, so stick around for that. We will get stuck into it very soon here. Be right back.
See you on the fly.
All right, so we are back more with Max Feldmann, but before we get into the Illinois flag redesigns, let's figure out why it needs a redesign in the first place. So Max, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, so if you look at the Illinois flag as it is, it's pretty generic, and if you weren't from there, you probably couldn't tell apart from any other state. So they're in like a somewhat of a like an implied circle. There is an American eagle holding an American crested shield, so with 13 stripes representing the 13 original colonies, on a rock that has the numbers 1868 and 1818. Just on a grass field. There's also an olive branch underneath the shield, and the American eagle is also holding a couple of banners saying state sovereignty and national union. There's a sunset over what I believe to be a lake specifically in the background, and also of note the word sovereignty is actually upside down. Yes. And I forgot the exact year, but they added the words Illinois in something close to Arial or Times New Roman at the bottom of the flag.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, so generally you couldn't tell apart. Like if you look at any of the specific elements, it just screams American, but it doesn't scream Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, if I didn't know about flags, I would have zero idea what state this was supposed to be.
Right.
Oh, it's one of those states that loves sovereignty and eagles. Okay, that could be fucking any of them.
Exactly. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah. So, okay. So that's why they need the redesign. Now, what have you done with the redesign? And I guess like maybe take us through kind of the process. Like, where did you start and where'd you get?
Well, I think generally it fails to represent Illinois as a distinct state. I mean, it just screams, I'm an American state, but it could have been Iowa for God knows. You know, it could have been Wisconsin. It could be any U.S. state. It's like, we know you're a U.S. state. You don't, you know, you need to show us that and show us your uniqueness and not just tell us you're an American state. But there is an interesting piece of history there that I wanted to preserve, and I think some other designers wanted to preserve, is actually the state motto, State Sovereignty, National Union, and that's the banner portion of the flag. And I don't think it should be represented like that, but like an interesting little history tidbit of it is the motto was actually suggested by the Illinois Secretary of State Sharon Tyndall to be reversed to be National Union State Sovereignty, because this motto was adopted right after the Civil War. The seal was designed in 1868. That said, the Illinois state legislature, they voted to just keep the motto as it is, State Sovereignty, National Union, in that order. And designer, as a kind of form of protest, actually wanted to he obliged by the official legislation, but he kind of had a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek approach, where the word sovereignty is upside down, making it a little bit less readable and kind of in a way kind of a back at you type of approach.
Right.
So
that was a deliberate design choice?
It was. So that, I think that should be preserved, or that at least that element of state sovereign national union. But it's a very cool piece of history. The rest of the design is just super generic, but that, I think that's kind of a special thing that really only Illinois can claim.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. The only, you know how Southwest Airlines has the flag planes?
The flag planes?
Yes, Southwest Airlines, they have flag liveries on...
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. The only one that I've ever flown on was the Illinois one.
Really?
I was still fucking annoyed because because the sovereignty word was upside down, which I know it is on the flag too, as we just said. But it was so I was God, there's so many better. This is the worst of the flag planes that I could be on.
Right.
Which I think is probably pretty much where we're going with this discussion. Is it's
exactly.
Man, I love being on a flag livery plane. I just wish it wasn't this one the way that it's currently constructed.
Right, you got the short end of the stick.
Really,
give me the Texas flag.
God, I know. I'd have killed for. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I know what you mean about the upside down shit. It's nonsense.
Right. Complete dog shit.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Of course, so I wanted to take a stab at redesign. So I got into this sphere actually relatively early, as I kind of mentioned. And actually I was thinking about submitting to the Minnesota flag design contest, but by the time I knew it existed, the deadline had passed a week ago. So I'm happy with how it turned out. So that's all that matters. So and when this came about, I was well, I'm not technically from Illinois, but I'm in South Bend, Indiana. Illinois is within an hour drive of here, and going to here, I've driven the entire length of the state from Cairo at the very southern tip to Chicago.
Yeah.
So so I wanted to take a stab at it, and of course, I knew I was coming from a disadvantage not coming here, or not being a resident here and not growing up here. So I wanted to be very deliberate in how I approach this, the research, and and I could do all the research I want, but at the end of the day, I should be able to look at the flag, or more important, not me, but Illinoisians should look at the flag and think that feels like Illinois to me. So the main element I started with was the state motto, State Sovereignty and National Union. And how I represent that at first was keeping the white field for the sake of continuity, adding a blue disc, putting 20 stars in a circle inside that blue disc at the very periphery of it, and then in the middle having a larger white star representing Illinois itself, with the 20 stars representing the 20 stars emitted to the Union prior to Illinois.
Right. Okay.
And then because before I did the research, I added a orange ring around that blue disc because seemingly a lot of other people said that was the unofficial Illinois color, which I'm starting to think not really. It's more just the flagship university there.
I was gonna say, like, it reminds me of the Chicago Bears, you know,
Right.
the orange and the blue and the white. Like,
Right.
yeah.
And apparently the University
Illinois,
their colors is that like dark blue and orange.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to lean too heavily in that because I feel like, I mean, sports brands are great. If you go to Michigan, for example, like they have a not great flag, but basically the de facto flag there is the University of Michigan flag, which is just like a big old yellow M on a blue field.
Yep.
That's like a substitute. But
Yep.
Sports teams can move, and they're corporations. So I feel like that's a substitute, but it shouldn't be like the main source of inspiration for creating flags of governments or peoples.
Yeah, for sure. So that's your first one, and we'll have it up on the screen
Yes.
here for the viewers, but that was your first iteration, which is the 5-pointed star and the circle of how many? 20, you said?
20 stars for the 20 prior states admitted to the Union before Illinois, and then
Okay,
an
so
additional
Illinois is the
1 star
21st
for,
state, in other words?
yes, 21
Okay.
stars total, including Illinois itself.
All right, and the kind of like, I mean, I guess like for lack of a better color comparison for listeners, I would say it's like kind of the Bears blue and orange.
Yeah, Bears.
And and the white, but
right.
All right, so where do you go from there?
So I did a little bit more research, and like the general gist I got was like Illinois was, well, of course it was a free state, technically. I mean, unfortunately, like slavery was still permitted in like some like exclusive cases, and not just in Illinois and other states, but like generally as a free state. And obviously, like Abraham Lincoln in his role as an Illinois.
So I say there was some president from there, if I remember right.
Right, that's right. He was the one who kept the nation together. Who would have thought? So, so obviously, like apparently, like as you can imagine, like there's a lot of Lincoln iconography all over the state.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to just slap on a top hat, onto the flag. I feel like I couldn't find a way to just make that work well. Like I've seen other like designs out there that do that, but none of them just look visually appealing. And I've seen a few other
there's a lot
versions
more you
where
could
like
do
black represents Lincoln because of like a black politician suit. But I couldn't quite find it, so I wanted to emphasize like union, both with a capital and lowercase u. So the circle you start with there is a union of stars, and I promise I'll get to the other iteration soon. You have a union of stars. Has a few meanings there. One, of course, just the number of states before Illinois, but also in like the Midwest, and I would say especially in Illinois and Iowa. I don't think I could get away with this in like Indiana. Indiana already has a pretty good flag with that circle stars, but I probably couldn't get away with it in like North Dakota or Wisconsin. Is the idea of communities. So of course, like Illinois, there's obviously a very stark divide between Chicago and the rest of the state. But in the rest of the state, generally people are within like 15 minutes of like some sort of small town that they can gather in, even if they're like a pretty rural farmer. And there's a lot of like small size cities in Illinois.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add that aspect of like Midwestern community coming together, that type of sensation.
Yeah. As my Midwestern friend calls it, Midwest excellence.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I wanted to do that, and it still, keeps the state sovereignty, national union aspect of it. But then I wanted to do a little bit more. So apparently, white already was substituting or representing something that I don't think you can really accurately represent in vexillology. It has to be somewhat abstracted. Is the idea of government transparency?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, Illinois being a free state and its role there, but also government transparency. And something I didn't know is that like 2 or 3 prior governors of Illinois were arrested and put behind bars for corruption.
Wait, like recently?
I think within like the last 30 years.
I was
So
gonna
like
say, yeah.
somewhat recently.
Like, who's the one that Blagojevich?
I
Right? He was the one that
honestly-
tried to sell Obama's Senate seat.
Right, I think so.
And then I forget who. No, not Pritzker, because he's the current. I forget who the other one was.
Yeah. So like, I mean, it's kind of ironic, but like at the same time, it's part of the ideal, and part of that is the
Chicago's.
again, the communal aspect, and then white also serves maybe somewhat counterintuitively for some people, but makes sense when you talk about it. The idea of like agricultural society, because a lot of people will just do like green or yellow for the land,
Right,
which is not very unique, and we see that in a lot of like amateur designs. It's just like green bar land. It's like, okay, we all know that you have land. All these places have land. You have to uniquely represent that. But the idea of like simplicity is the simple type of lifestyle. I think this is more appealing to the vast majority in terms of land, not population. Where I think I think the population split is like nearly 50-50 between like Chicagoland and the rest of the state. But the idea of like simplicity and honesty, because I think Illinoisans are honest people who aren't like super flashy, but they know how to work hard and they know how to treat others with respect and dignity. I think white as being like the dominant color really alludes to that fact. And I think that kind of ties into the agricultural element. And then on top of that, it matches very well with the Chicago flag already. So like it matches, but it's not a Chicago dominated style. So like if you look up like, Illinois flag redesigns, a lot of them will just have very Chicago reminiscent flags.
Right.
And I wanted to avoid that as much as possible.
I was going to say, like, not to butt in too much, but like, yeah, that is the problem with most Illinois redesigns is they tend to always even if they end up being a bit like one or two of yours, they always have the 6-pointed star. They always have the Chicago star, and they always, generally anyway, have it in its color, even if it's white fimbriated or whatever. And to the point where I've talked to so many people from Illinois that say we are not Chicago.
Exactly.
Yes, Chicago is part of Illinois, but we are not Chicago.
Right. So I wanted to, and I think the reason for that is there's not a lot of obvious symbolism for Illinois, and people are just trying to grasp onto something. It's like, okay, what is Illinois? Chicago's Illinois, so we're going to use that as a base.
Right.
But you can't do that because you're alienating the rest of the state.
Exactly.
I mean, there's already so much stark division between the state, that manifests in culture and politics. So you can't start there. It's nice that it complements the Chicago flag, my design, but it's not just mimicking the Chicago flag.
Right. Complementing is infinitely preferable. Yeah. Because if we had I'm trying to think of every state's equivalent to that, right? And one of the only states that I've lived in is Tennessee. And if we had that equivalent, it would just be the Tennessee flag, but with a badly a guitar in the middle instead of 3 stars. It would just have a guitar or something. Or if it tried to represent all the different parts of Tennessee, it would have a guitar, a banjo, and a trumpet or something, like our quarter did. But then that just looks like shit.
Right. And there are some other ones that do that, again, as I mentioned, with Lincoln with a top hat, that just seems a little bit too cartoony. And then some represent either corn, which one isn't while Illinois has a massive agricultural output, is that's not distinguished enough from it's not distinct enough from Iowa, Nebraska, and it's a bit on the nose. It's a bit kind of stereotypical. It's
Right.
like I don't it's like if you just put like a corn emblem as like here's the new flag in Nebraska, I don't think that would fly with a lot of people.
Like it would
literally
be
and figuratively.
It would be like if New York State's flag just had like the Statue of Liberty in the middle. It's like most of the people in that state, maybe not statistically because so many people live in New York, but like do not have anything in common with that symbol or give a shit about that symbol.
Right. And you'd be surprised, like I've done a redesign of the New York State flag, but like I've seen plenty of New York City flag redesign proposals with just the Empire State Building, yes, even the state. A lot of people like will use the Empire State Building as like a state emblem. It's like you can't do that. And in fact, the Empire State Building was not like the nickname the Empire State came before the building. That's what the building is named after, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So you have to go in a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, it's just like it's an exercise in. I guess it could be kind of fun if you want to think of it that way. To think about like if every state had their flag redesigned on just the thing they're most famous for, but like, yeah, you shouldn't like. It's an exercise for a reason. Like, you don't actually treat state flags that way. Like, please don't make my state flag have like the Bass Pro Shop pyramid in the middle, or the Batman building in Nashville, or even the fucking Tennessee Aquarium. Like, I don't want any of that shit in the flag. I think part of the reason the Tennessee one works is because like it does lump in the 3 distinct regions, but it just leaves them as stars. It does not make one a banjo and one a trumpet. It leaves them as stars, and it says, hey, that's good enough. There are 3 of them.
Yeah.
I think the more like specific and like into the weeds you get with like stuff like that, the less that it works. Like you can't put the Chicago star in. You can't put like, you're not going to put like the bean in because that's even more specific.
Right.
Like, you know, like leave it vague but relevant. Like tie in the things, but not as, I don't know, like hyper specific elements.
Exactly.
Like
and like I think like, and I've seen a lot of designs that like include some reference to Chicago, but also references to like the rest of the state. But like they're more specific than just like generic stars on like the tri-star. Like they will use the Chicago like star, like a red star specifically, red 6-point star, and then they will have like a corn belt thing. It's like you can't do that. You know, you have to have some sort of abstraction there, or else like. And I think Ted K said this on your own podcast one time. Like you have like it's better to have like a symbol that represents everybody. And with like the flag of like Montreal and Quebec, it looks somewhat okay. I mean, visually, I think it can use a little bit of work because it's kind of, if you can just put that up, you have like 4 flowers representing the 4 like major ethnicities.
Yep.
And then they added like 1 like retrospectively to represent the indigenous population there.
Yeah.
I mean, visually it looks a little bit unbalanced because it feels like with like the identical quadrants, you should have like an identical element. But like, there's always going to be a possibility of like you're excluding one people. And Canada has like a lot of like Asian immigrants. I'm sure maybe in 20 or 30 years, people are going to ask, hey, why am I not represented on this flag? I'm Asian, but I'm completely Canadian, and I'm completely totally a Montreal. I don't know the demonym for Montreal people, but like totally a contributing citizen of Montreal. Why I'm not represented on my flag. So I think what your state flag does of Tennessee does it really well because it has the 3 regions, and I would say that's pretty unique because I think like you're the only state that has like, I forgot the exact system, but each region has like legal representation in your government to some degree.
Devolved, I think is the term, but like
right, but it's inclusive enough of everyone. Everyone's like each region is balanced, but then like each region isn't excluding a major population within that. or like
Right.
stereotyping them either.
Yeah.
And they're unified. They're literally in a circle.
Yeah.
So I think that does that well. So sorry, I know that was a bit of a tangent, but
No, it's okay. I started that tangent. Before we get into our second break, I would love for you to go over what's my favorite version of your flag, which is the one with the blue stripe across the middle. Just like briefly go into that one, and like you've already touched on a lot of the design elements. I'd love for you especially to go into more on the star there, and just like why there's that stripe, that blue stripe with the white on either side, because I suspect it goes into the Centennial stuff.
of course. So like I'm assuming you have those flags on screen.
Yep.
If you could also just put up the Illinois Centennial flag designed by
Oh, yeah.
Wallace Rice.
Trust me, I got it.
Within this community, that seems to be a very well-known flag. It's like, why not just use this as a state flag, which is a great idea. And so
can I say I don't fucking like that Centennial flag. I do not like it. I think yours corrects what I don't like about it.
Yeah, I visually like it. I think there's one area that may be slightly problematic. And I can go explain that. So if you started with like the center star disc flag, weirdly enough, I was thinking, okay, how do I represent what Rice already represented? Because the top 10 stars represent the northern states admitted to the Union, the free states. And the bottom 10 stars represent the southern states that permitted slavery. So I was actually trying to represent that, and I don't think, in retrospect, I don't think that was a good idea, but it worked to the design I got, where I corrected that issue. So I was actually trying to do something similar to the Greenland flag, believe it or not, where like I inverse the colors on each half. And then in doing that, before I inverted the colors, it's like I had the bicolor design, which you can see on screen. And I was like, wait a minute, this actually looks good. And there's actually a lot of meaning here. So Illinois is also known for the Cahokia Mounds, which are essentially the like Aztec and Mayan equivalents of Illinois. It's like the first people there, the first major civilizations. It's actually really big, but it's just buried under history. And even before, like, even during Columbian times, it was long gone by that point. No one actually knows how that civilization ended. But like the mounds are, you can still see some of the mounds. And because that blue circle is superimposed partially on the blue stripe of the same color, you get a little bit of a hump effect. And it's like, that looks a lot like a Cahokia mound. It looks like a mound coming out from the ground.
Never would have guessed that.
I have like the same symbolism as I had before, but now I had the Cahokia mounds because it's a bicolor. I have the plains, the Illinois plains, which takes up the vast majority of the state.
Right.
At the time I was thinking, okay, how do I represent this? Do I do like green, like dotted with like purple dots to represent like the state flower, violets? And it's like, none of those work. None of them were like super like emblematic of the state. Violets are the state flower. They don't have that resonance in terms of like, yeah, that's fucking Illinois right there and not Minnesota or something like that. But now I had a little bit more symbolism, and then I looked back at the Centennial flag. It's like, okay, what if I changed that blue stripe to be in the center, a little bit smaller? And then it has the same sort of symbolism, but instead the plains symbolism maybe is a little bit weakened, because now you have 3 stripes, so you can say like one of the stripes are the clouds and the sky, and then the bottom stripe is the land. It's not as direct. And same for the Cahokia mounds. Now you have like 2 smaller humps, so you can still say they're both the Cahokia mounds, but it's not quite as stark as the single hump on the bicolor design.
Right.
And so now I have like the basic design down. I think the tricolor, as I think you would agree with this, just looks a little bit more appealing.
I mean, yeah, like not a little bit, infinitely.
Right.
To me.
I like for me, I like the concept of the bicolor more in terms of like what it's trying to do, but visually, I think the tricolor is just so much better.
I think the tricolor just works so well,
right.
and like, so I think like, I mean, the way that I would put it is that your tricolor is doing everything that the Centennial flag tried to do,
Yes.
but better.
Right.
It's like it has these weird stars that kind of build up to like, it looks like a sideways rocket ship or something.
Right.
But
here's where it gets juicy because
like...
I'm about to actually address the exact thing. So,
okay, all right, let's get into it then.
So I had like just a regular star, like without the little like cutout, without the negative space.
Right. Okay. Right.
And then I thought, based on the research, like Illinois just seems to be like a huge place of progress. Obviously, Abraham Lincoln, but then like obviously Chicago, like outside Chicago too, like rail, huge agricultural input. Like it's been generally like a very progressive state.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I can list specifics. I don't have all of them memorized, but like from the gist of like the
you don't have them all memorized.
I read is like a place of progress that moves the nation forward. So, and I thought forward, and then I actually had designs for the Wisconsin state flag. And it's like, as you probably know, like all the redesigns have like that like hollowed out chevron. A lot of them, like, you know, Flags for Good actually sells like that exact one. There's just a star towards the hoist, and then there's a little like chevron, not a full triangle at the hoist, but a little hollow one.
Yeah, it looks like the Converse logo.
Exactly. And basically everyone has already did every iteration of that sort of design. So it was like, and I was just doing it for fun. It's like, okay, how do I actually make mine unique and not just like a regurgitation of someone else's design? And I came up with that like arrowhead star design. And, you know, because the state motto is forward, and that's a unique way to do it. And it's like, this actually works. Like, I don't think this would work in any other state outside of Wisconsin and Illinois, but Illinois is just the one other state where like there's a justified use here. And it substitutes for the little arrow constellation that Rice's design has. Yeah. But it also avoids the main problem is he's stratifying the northern and southern states. And like I know that's kind of part of Illinois' history and with the Civil War, but I feel like if we like, for lack of a better word, fetishize that too much, like I feel like that can be problematic. You know, we may be emphasizing division more than unity. So my circle stars has the unity part, but the arrowhead has like the progress moving forward part of it. And then with both the bicolor and the tricolor, I move that entire disc and the stars in it towards the hoist. One, because it visually looks better, but two, but also to symbolize that, you know, progress is never complete. There's always things to be done, and Illinois is continually moving the nation forward, and it hasn't come to completion.
My God, yeah, that's even more brilliant than I thought it was. Because, yeah, like, I mean, I love it on its just, like, design merits alone, in the sense of I thought, okay, it's progress. It's progressing forward. It's an arrow pointing in that direction. Like, obviously, the rest of it makes it a star. But, yeah, the kind of, like, subtle, well-ish lines around it, in regards to the other points, make it, technically incomplete. Which, as you said, progress is pretty much always incomplete. Right. So,
and then, like, I didn't get to this earlier, but like, there's a lot of union, which I think like it kind of replaces like a more like on the nose
national union, but states
like national union, but also Lincoln. So like the white, like they're American colors, Old Glory blue, white field. Like the blue is the same as in the national flag, which represents union, again with a capital U and lowercase u. It's a union of stars because it's circle, and it also harks back to the Betsy Ross flag, like one of the like the original design of the American flag when there's still only 13 colonies and then states. It goes again to the state motto, but like it's in a unified design too. So state sovereignty is still within the circle of stars. So it's not emphasizing too much on the state sovereignty, kind of going back to the upside down sovereignty word on the current flag.
Yeah. National union, state sovereignty.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I wish I didn't get to this earlier, but like it does the same thing with what the tri-star design does in Tennessee flag, with the tri-color fez in here, because Illinois generally is divided up into three distinct regions. There's generally like the northern region, which is basically Chicagoland, but also kind of like right outside of Iowa and Wisconsin. There's like a lot of suburbs and like kind of small cities there. There's central Illinois, which is like basically the huge like agricultural output. It's kind of what you think of Illinois outside of Chicago. It's all the fields and farms and agriculture. And then there's southern Illinois, which is kind of like central Illinois, but it's more southern in culture, as you can imagine, with a state being that long. So, and like I didn't start with the Centennial flag, but like that was kind of the end result. Like the influence of the Centennial flag came at the very end, specifically with like turning it from a bicolor to a tricolor design.
Yeah.
And so everything came together. And once I saw like the bicolor and then especially the tricolor, I was like, this is the damn flag. This is it. This is Illinois right here. So I saved that for a couple weeks, submitted my design as soon as the contest opened. Like I tried at midnight, and I was like, okay, it's probably going to be at like 8 a.m. And of course it was 8 a.m. Central time. So I submitted those as soon as I could. There's like some technical glitches like for the first 15 minutes. So I wasn't number one, but my designs were numbers 3 and 4. I didn't submit the my original design. It was like, it's really good, but like I just feel like there's some stuff missing. Weirdly enough, I submitted basically a modified Centennial flag where I replaced the central star with my version of the star. So
right.
I kind of regret that. It's like it kind of like maybe
how many did you get to submit?
Up to 3. So I submitted the bicolor, the tricolor, and then the modified Centennial flag.
Okay, right.
I probably shouldn't have submitted the third one. Like the symbolism is a bit redundant with both the chevron of stars and the arrowhead star at the same time. But like as you said, like my pitch was, this is a great Centennial flag, but modified so it's a little bit less problematic and has a bunch of other symbolism baked into it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you done good. When will you hear anything from that?
Well, I really wanted to hear something by the time we're filming this podcast. So like they said no later than
we can redo all of it.
By later than the 1st of January.
Okay.
So like we only have a month left. Like I would assume they would do it before then, but unlike the Minnesota contest where they publicly like released all the submissions for everyone to see,
right,
we won't see any of the designs until they select the top 10. So we will only see the top 10 finalists.
And how serious are they going to be with those top 10? Like, is it definitely going to be one of those top 10? And right. If so, are they going to do like with the current flag is one of those 10, or is the 11th one, or?
Oh, right. So
do you know that yet?
So they didn't say for a while, but like 2 months later, there was some press release where they said, so it's going to be the top 10 alongside the current flag, the Centennial flag, and then the squat. I forgot how you say the Centennial, the 150 year anniversary, the
Sesquicentennial. Yeah.
So like the public will be able to vote among the top 10 finalists plus those 3 historic flags.
Okay, gotcha. So there will be 13 to be voted on.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So as for my design,
there's no cap on how many of your 3 make it in. Like you could have 3 of the 13. You probably statistically won't, but you could.
Right. Theoretically, I guess so. With the tricolor, I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I feel like it's a very solid design, has a lot of meaning. The only thing is one, like they really emphasized, what is your connection to Illinois?
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, like I've been through state multiple times, I've driven through, but like I hope my like lack of residency doesn't hurt me in any way. it seems like they're taking it pretty seriously because
Just
like they're
lie on
going
that.
to schools and like kind of educating like kids about this opportunity, trying to get like feedback and input from them.
Yeah.
So like, and I feel like that would be like a great kind of, I think like kids and their imagination is probably a good like litmus test.
I mean,
to flag
honestly,
design.
yes.
But like they're getting people involved, which seems optimistic to me.
They probably want their own Benny Benson story where it's like, oh, we had a
Right.
child who was, 12 years old at one of our schools who came up with this. Like, they probably want some kind of story like that.
Right. So unfortunately, I don't have that. So that could be like one of the Achilles heels for me.
Like,
And
they
then
budget for you.
right. And then the other is like I really appreciate how much you love that star. You mentioned it in the Discord. You mentioned it to me personally.
I honestly, like, yeah, that's not bull. I mentioned that to you before you were, I mentioned that before you were in the Discord. I was like, hey guys, here's this guy's flag. I really like this fucking star. What do y'all think?
It's like I was trying to find a Discord as like the day after I emailed you. So like as soon as I joined, it was like, oh, there's my design with being solicited for feedback.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like the day after, I guess.
Right, but anyway, so like I mean, I've posted this in r/vexology on Reddit, generally very positive. And then I also posted it on r/Chicago. For whatever reason, I wanted to do on r/Illinois, but like I don't know what the posting settings on there. Like it basically just deleted as soon as I went up, and I tried a couple times, so I gave up there. But Chicago has more. That subreddit has more. The Chicago subreddit has more Redditors than Illinois.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's not a big surprise, but like generally it was also positive. But like the star was like the biggest point of controversy. I mean, there's gonna be people who like saying like, no, we don't want a flag design. Like I even posted like what do you think of the Centennial flag on that subreddit, and like that was like really negative. So like generally like people who aren't in that community, like people can be pretty resistant to change.
Yeah.
And like you saw that with like the main flag redesign, where the original 1901 flag, insert flag here, lost to the current flag, which is essentially just is just a seal on a bed sheet. Yep. Part of that is just how they conducted the survey. I think it was on the same ballot as like the presidential and like electing your congressman ballot there, but like there's no pictures or anything. So like I think that's part of it, but like I think people are also generally resistant to change. So part of it is good design, but part of it is marketing and really getting it out to people and persuading them and just disseminating the flag out there so people can see it in the wild. So I think that's like the other kind of bigger caveat to my flag is that star, because like I've heard a few jokes saying like it looks like a Space Force flag or like a like Star Trek flag. Like those stars are a little bit different, but like I sort of see what they're getting at, even though that was never the intent.
Sure, I guess like in that same vein though, it looks like a like mouse pointer, like okay, it looks like a triangle that tapers. Like sure, there's a lot of shit that does that. Like I don't know. Yeah, it might be a victim of its time with Space Force coming around.
Yeah, it's like that was never it was so much like actually just
nothing you can help.
I actually emailed the committee saying, look, if that like design is too controversial, and this was way after, this was like a month, 2 months ago. I did this like 2 times, I think. Like, here's expanded symbolism because they limited you to only 500 characters of describing your symbolism, and then 500 more for describing your connection to Illinois. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get everything there. I prepared a 500 word symbolism description, and it was like, oh shit, it's even less than that. So I had to really narrow things down very quickly. And then so I was like, committee, thank you so much for your work. I just wanted to provide a little bit more of an expanded description of my design and the symbolism. And as you saw in your email, it was just a really long essay of sorts of all the symbolism there. And then later it was like, okay, this design may be a little bit controversial because of the star. I want just to be safe. If there's any chance they could replace it with like a normal star, should that be in their discretion, or because they said nothing about like
Yeah,
modifying
yeah.
designs compared to Minnesota. They just said like vote on the top 10.
I saw you sent those to me as well for
Right.
yeah.
So I was like, here's like an alternate version with a regular star, just in case if that's what it takes. In case that's like another Achilles heel. I feel pretty confident that the Bicolor would make it, but like those are probably the two biggest pitfalls that would prevent it from making it.
See, I've never been to Illinois, including Chicago. Never been.
Not even Chicago, no.
No, no. It's one of my blind spots. But and so like I guess like by saying that, all I mean is like I can't speak to what the people in Illinois like feel and think about what their flag should be, but I just feel like it's so obviously this first one, like the tricolor one.
I agree,
And
but
I know like yeah,
like, where's the eagle? Even though like the eagle says nothing about Illinois, it's
and
just saying we are
like,
American.
Even your modified submission number 3, like with the without it looking as quote unquote Space Forcey or whatever,
right?
Like honestly, I would take that any day. I'd slightly prefer the other one, but like,
right.
I feel like people don't want to turn to star though.
Yeah, I've done a couple. Like I did have another modification. I don't know if it's in your email, but I put it in the Discord where it's like it's the edges are outlined in that orange color.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Like so, I can basically like say I can show the arrowhead like it's clearly pointing to the right to the fly without like having it be a broken star, so it can still be distinct and like kind of have that symbolism without making it if it looks too spacey to people. And like technically you can have the same symbolism with a regular star, but generally like people will say like I got a comment saying like why is the star drunk? Because it's not obvious it's pointing to the right because we're so used to stars pointing up. So like a lot of people saw like without the like it being broken, it's like pointing like to like around like 1 or 2 o'clock.
Yep.
So I mean we'll see. I mean it's in the hands of the committee and then Illinois voters.
Yeah, not the best hands, but we'll see. Well, that's probably a good enough place to close out the regular part of the show. We will stick around and talk for a few more on the bonus bit of the show, but for now, for the time being, what do you have, if anything, to plug? And that can include places to get your flag voted for the most, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that's in the cards here, but you take it away.
Well, I mean, if you really want to support this flag, you can I have it just on change.org, not to like convince anyone. That's not my job, that's the committee's, but just to have the public information out there. So you can look up Illinois Flag Redesign by Maxwell Feldmann. I have a few other state flags and city flags out there. Some of them are better than others. So I would say Centennial Flag Redesign, specifically the Alamo Rose window flag for the city of Centennial. And then I also have the Capital Star flag for the city of Austin.
Hell yeah. Yeah, well, awesome. Yeah, I will have all of those links up in the show notes as well as on the screen for the viewers. As far as the show goes, you guys know you can find us anywhere on the link tree. That is linktree.com/flagged for content, all spelled out. We do have merch for, Christmas type stuff. We do have a Patreon for bonus content that Max and I are about to go into, in fact. And yeah, just a bunch of fun links over there. Anywhere with an @ we are @flagged for content, like for like the number. I think that's pretty much it. And man, I have not been taking notes. I had a way to close this, podcast, but it was just in my mind. I have no notes on it. So, like,
Well,
Max, if you want to take it away and close us out here,
course.
that'd be fantastic.
Just remember, every flag tells a story, so make sure yours is worth flying.
Whew. Short and sweet. I love it. Thank you, Max. Thanks, viewers, listeners, and we will catch y'all on the fly side.
Take care, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Flag for Content is proud to be sponsored by Flags for Good. Go to flagsforgood.com for more information.